Well, hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. It was an honor to host the Western Premiers Conference here in beautiful Kananaskis country, and I'm grateful to my Western Premier colleagues for being fantastic partners in strengthening the country. I'm also grateful to the Indigenous business leaders who joined the Western Premiers in a roundtable yesterday to explore practical approaches to economic reconciliation. We had a productive discussion sharing successes and lessons learned and opportunities to strengthen collaboration across the West. We all understand that this is Canada's moment and that we need to work together to make the most of it. To achieve the prosperity and change we want to see in this great country, we need unity, certainty, and stability that enables each province and territory to develop their economies and to export their resources to the world. We are all stronger members of a united Canada. We are committed to working together and with the federal government through challenging issues that have created frustration for many Western Canadians to create a more prosperous future. There are many ways to do this because Western Canada is home to an incredibly diverse economy. We have vast energy and mineral resources, tremendous agricultural capacity, deep innovation in everything from AI to life sciences to carbon capture, and transportation networks that connect it all together. The West punches above its weight. In fact, we rival Ontario's economy. Last year, Western Canadian provinces and territories accounted for more than 41% of Canada's global exports. Our energy alone represented more than 27% of that total. The West's agricultural products were almost half of Canada's exports in the field. Collectively, the Western province's population is the same size as Ontario's, and we have the same GDP generation as Ontario. In fact, the West is responsible for 37% of Canada's total GDP. And those are impressive numbers, but to realize the West's true potential, we need to think bigger, because we are just getting started. Thinking big was a huge part of our conversations these past couple of days. In all of our discussions, the focus was on how to position Western Canada as a global leader. We are pleased to publicly release an Economic Corridors in Western Canada report, which helps map the infrastructure and trade connections needed to unlock the West's full potential. The report advances upon the objectives achieved by the Western Premiers through the MOU that we signed in 2025. If Canada wants growth, resilience, and expanding access to global markets, we need corresponding federal investment and partnership in a port-to-port-to-port strategy. We discussed prioritizing nation-building projects from pipelines, rail, and ports to electricity transmission and trade corridors. We all agree that more federal investment and faster action are needed on these projects, and we welcome the federal government's intention to advance reforms to accelerate project approvals, which must be implemented through legislation and concrete policy changes. Canada can't afford delays in developing nation-building infrastructure. With CUSMA negotiations underway, we also agree on the importance of stable and predictable North American trade frameworks. We must strengthen our current trade relationships while also making sure that we develop new partnerships across the globe. We also discussed the growing importance of defense and national security in the West and the North. From Arctic sovereignty to critical infrastructure to reliable energy and supply chains, Western Canada has an essential role to play in Canada's security. Beyond economic growth, we discussed ensuring Western Canada has a strong voice in advancing practical reforms that keep communities safe, support victims, and strengthen frontline capacity. We share deep concern and sorrow about the tragic events in Tumbler Ridge in February and discussed the need for federal legislation to address the needs for mandatory reporting of threats to protect communities. And finally, we also discussed this year's wildfire season and the need for additional federal funding for Western provinces and territories to continue investing in disaster preparedness. And we noticed that the federal government just announced an investment in additional 10 firefighting helicopters today, and we're grateful for that. There are many points of agreement among us, and we are firmly aligned on the need to continue to build a stronger, more competitive and secure Canada by fully realizing the strengths of the Western provinces and territories. I'm proud to be an advocate for the West's success, and I'm excited about how much we'll accomplish together for this nation that we love and the people that we serve. Thank you, and now we'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you. We'll now enter the media Q&A portion. We'll be taking one question, one follow-up. A reminder to media to state your name and outlet before asking your question and direct it to the according premiers as well. We'll start off with questions here in the room, and then before trying to make our way onto the Zoom call for some questions there too. We'll go ahead to our first at the mic.
Hi there, Janet French with CBC Edmonton. My question is for Premier Kinew. So I understand that you met with chiefs yesterday, some Alberta First Nation chiefs, to hear their concerns about separation referendum question and other matters. And I'm wondering why did you want that meeting, and tell us what happened in the meeting.
Thank you. And first of all, I want to thank Premier Smith and her team for doing a wonderful job in hosting us here in Kananaskis. And thanks to all the folks who work here at this beautiful hotel. So I come bearing an important message from the First Nations of Canada on the question of Alberta separation. I've heard loud and clear that Indigenous people from coast to coast to coast are prepared to use every treaty right at our disposal to ensure that Canada does not lose Connor McDavid. We wanted to spend some time with some of the leadership, and of course I want to acknowledge the leaders who are participating in the roundtable here as well, as a gesture of goodwill. This is how I was raised, to pay respects when we come to a territory. And so I would describe yesterday's meeting as a cultural gathering, a cultural visit. And I was very moved. They actually gave me a Blackfoot name during the opening ceremony that we had, and we had a very, very good discussion. There was a lot of issues being raised, of course, but there was also a lot of cultural moments. It was very, very moving to hear Cree and Blackfoot and Nakota spoken in the meeting. And of course, I nodded along, pretending that I understood what was being said in these other languages. But I had the opportunity to share with Premier Smith yesterday some of the concerns around Section 35 and the need for it to be respected. So there was some of that bringing forward a message, definitely, and I want to share that with the room here. But I also had a message for the chiefs, which is, I'm a patriot. I love this country. And I just wanted to say thanks as a fellow Canadian for the leadership in the room who had stopped the referendum question from moving forward. And I thought that was important to say as a representative of Manitoba. And so we had a really good visit, and then we came here and we had a really good meeting with our fellow premiers. And so I think the other thing that I wanted to share is after the meeting and when we were leaving Calgary, we stopped at A&W, and there was an older woman who was working there, and she stopped me as she was handing me the brown paper bag, and she goes, "Wab, tell our premier we don't want to separate from Canada." So I'm passing that message on to you, Danielle, and saying on behalf of the rest of Canada, we're with that lady from A&W.
I actually meant to ask you to answer that in French as well, so I apologize.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind.
Even the bad jokes, the lame jokes.
You better mention Connor McDavid in français as well.
Yeah. Je suis très, très fier des actions des chefs ici en Alberta qui ont agi pour promouvoir le Canada. Et hier, c'était surtout une rencontre culturelle. Ils ont même donné un nom autochtone pendant cette réunion. Alors, je suis très honoré d'avoir cette chance d'engager au niveau culturel avant ce qu'on a engagé au niveau des politiques. Et puis oui, j'ai partagé des messages avec le Premier ministre de l'Alberta au sujet des questions des droits autochtones. Mais en même temps, il y avait beaucoup d'engagement ici sur les enjeux qui nous intéressent en tant que le Premier ministre de l'Ouest du Canada. Et puis c'est dans cette façon que je voudrais appuyer un Canada uni.
And just could you, as a follow-up in English and French, could you be a bit more specific about your concerns about Premier Smith's mentioning of having a look at Section 35.1? Thanks.
Well, I think I answered your two questions the way that I wanted to. Thank you so much.
Go ahead, turn next to the mic.
Hi, Caroline Bargout with CBC National News. This question is for Premier Eby. A number of media outlets, including Bloomberg, are reporting that Canada has made a deal with a German company to buy LNG from Silicens. Can you talk a little bit about that and tell us where the project is at?
Sure. Let me begin by thanking our host here in Alberta. We had a great meeting, and this is a beautiful part of the world. I've never been to Kananaskis before, and I got my first pair of cowboy boots, so it's been a memorable visit. So thank you, Premier Smith, and thank you to your team and to everyone who hosted us here. One of the things we're really proud of in British Columbia is our ability to get big things done, and the role that we see for ourselves in the future of Canada and the kind of economy that we're trying to build for Canadians from coast to coast to coast, one where Canada can stand on our own 2 feet, one where we're diversifying our trade flows, and we see a key role for ourselves in that, and we're delivering. We have about $88 billion in projects that are moving towards final investment decision, including the largest private sector investment in Canadian history, LNG Canada Phase 2. This has been the work of years. And Silicens LNG is a project of the Nisga'a Nation, proud treaty nation, modern treaty nation in British Columbia. They've done incredible work. We've been supportive from the very beginning of their initiative. And I am so glad to see the federal government joining us to take the foundation that has been built in British Columbia, the work of our government, the work of First Nations, working in partnership, the work of communities, and take it to the next level. I feel like British Columbia is throwing the ball up, and it's given the federal government a chance to take that alley-oop and dunk it. And this announcement that the federal government will be sharing more about is about how we can work together to deepen those trading relationships around the world. In this case, with Germany. And it really reflects what is possible when we work together, and the role that British Columbia is going to play in building this economy. So we look forward to celebrating the formal announcement of this with the Nisga'a, with the federal government. It's an example of the work we're doing together, and we're super proud of it.
My follow-up is, where is Silicens at? Has construction begun on that project?
Well, they have all of their permits from the provincial government, and they're ready to go. They are working towards what's called final investment decision, which is the go, no-go decision on construction. Part of the work to get to final investment decision is securing offtake agreements. That's commitments to buy the LNG from the facility. So a major announcement with a European partner of purchasing LNG gets us that much closer to final investment decision of this more than $10 billion investment in British Columbia and Canada.
Thank you. We'll go to our next at the mic.
Well, thank you for taking my question. Another BC reporter, Ben O'Hara-Byrne. To David Eby, yesterday you said you'd come here looking for clarity about what exactly your counterpart, Danielle Smith, was up to with her question on separation. How satisfied are you with the answers, and what did you hear?
Thanks for the question. I think the dominant question I was hearing in British Columbia is, why is Alberta doing this? Why are they putting a referendum question forward about the future of the country? It's a question I brought here to Premier Smith to engage with her on this important question about the future of our country. I've expressed my concerns about it. I am really pleased that we were able to agree on language in this communique, all premiers, myself, Premier Smith, everybody across the table, that a unified Canada is what enables all of the work that we want to do together to build a strong economy, to build the kind of country that we want. In the absence of a unified Canada, we'll be poorer, we will not be as successful, we will give comfort to people who want to break up our country, and sell it for parts. And so that very clear language at the beginning of the communique is a reassurance to me. I remain incredibly anxious, frankly, about this. I've seen the Brexit referendum that was just supposed to be a chance for people to express the clarity that they wanted to stay part of the EU, and it did not end up that way. I've communicated those anxieties to Premier Smith. She understands them. And my hope is that we can all come together and, as a unified country, address those concerns, because we can't address shared concerns together. Just like a family, we can work it out together, and we'll be stronger for it. And that's where I hope we end up.
And to you, Premier Smith, what did you hear from your counterparts at this table about those same concerns? This reads like a manifesto of why there shouldn't be a referendum.
Well, as I told you yesterday, in British Columbia, Alberta, and Saskatchewan, we have citizen-initiated referenda. British Columbia themselves had one when 700,000 people signed a petition on the HST, and that went to a vote, and it probably didn't go the way the government of the time thought it would go either. And so we're very conscious of the fact that 700,000 citizens signed one of two petitions wanting to have this question, and it's my job to ensure that they have hope in Canada again, that we have to address the legitimate grievances that have come from 10 years of economic attack on our province. And I'm grateful that the Prime Minister is working with us to address those legitimate grievances. And so that's what I'm going to be working on over the next 5 months, is to convince those Albertans who have lost hope that there's reason to have hope again. And I hope it's forums like this that allow for Albertans to see just how strong we are as a Western Canadian group of provinces and territories. It is, when you think about the incredible opportunity that we have, that we're already the population size and economic strength of Ontario, and we're just getting started on opening up markets into Asia. It seems to me that when you look at what we've agreed to in this communique, there is an incredible amount of optimism and hope that we'll be able to work together to develop those corridors. So I think that was what we spent most of our time talking about over the last couple of days.
Thanks,
Ben.
disagree
We'll go
with that,
to our
please do
next
that.
one at the mic.
Hi there, Julia Wong, CBC National. This is for Premier Smith. You've said it's worth taking a look at Section 35 of the Constitution, which affirms treaty rights and includes a duty to consult with Indigenous groups. I know that Manitoba Premier Kinew said that he told you he wants it to be respected. I wonder if you brought this up with your counterparts, and if so, what conversations were had?
No, I mean, the way we're going to seek clarity is through the court. We think that the duty to consult is meant to be looked at through a lens of major projects, and we take that very seriously. We had an Indigenous roundtable yesterday where I shared with the premiers how we're using our Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation to help underwrite major project participation, to give revenues to Indigenous nations, and how we want to continue engaging with Indigenous nations on that. But the issue, I think, in the court is whether that duty to consult should apply to citizen-initiated petitions. And that's where I think that the court erred in judgment, and I think it's also anti-democratic, the decision that they made. But we'll make the arguments in court about what the limits to duty to consult ought to be, and we'll see how that conversation goes. There's a couple of rounds that we have to go through, obviously, to Court of Appeal, probably also to the Supreme Court of Canada. But we want to make sure that we have a very clear understanding of what the duty to consult really means and what it doesn't mean. And I think at the moment there's a lack of clarity on that.
And you've talked a lot about...
Sorry, I'd like to respond. So I think we know that is not correct, a lot of what you just said there, Premier Smith. Specifically, and we spoke about this, so I don't mind repeating this. It is not up to the petition gatherers to fulfill the duty to consult. It is up to you as the Alberta government to fulfill the duty to consult. And in this case, when there's clearly going to be an impact on well-established existing hunting and fishing rights by putting up an international border, if some would have their way, the judge ruled, and I would agree with the judge's ruling, that that is going to infringe on rights. And so there is a duty to consult. Now, to take a step further, for the Albertan who's been frustrated over the lack of progress on pipelines, you've got the Premier of BC announcing LNG, we're working on Churchill, we're working on northern trade corridors. This is a moment to get big things built in Manitoba. And I would say now is the time to work together. Why don't we hold off on this referendum talk for a year or two and see if we get these pipelines under construction? Because at the end of the day, we want Canada to succeed. We're all very proud of this place. I myself am very, very patriotic. And what I think it's important for us to say when we hear this sorts of discussion happening here in Alberta is for us to say, okay, thank you First Nations in Alberta for hitting the pause button on this. Now the rest of Canada, let's work together and show Alberta just how appreciated they are in the rest of this country. Mais c'est pas nécessairement un désaccord, c'est juste un fait. que la section 35, c'est un fait que le gouvernement dans le Canada doit le respecter. C'est le même que le reste de la Constitution. Alors pour moi, oui, j'ai partagé des mots avec le Premier ministre Smith de l'Alberta, mais ce n'est pas avec un but de chicaner. C'est avec un but d'engager l'Alberta et puis les peuples qui habitent ici pour leur montrer le but d'avoir un Canada incroyable. Et puis oui, c'est la même approche que j'aurais avec une province de Québec qui voudrait engager avec cette même sorte de discussion.
And this is why we have the courts, because you can have politicians disagree, and that's why you take it through the court, and you take it through the appeals, and you go to the Supreme Court. And ultimately, though, I respect the difference of opinion that Premier Kinew has raised. I think we'll wait and to see how our Court of Appeals process goes and see what the courts have to say in the end.
Follow up.
Yeah, my second question is, Premier Smith, you talked a lot about the strain of the relationship with BC Premier David Eby and other BC premiers in the past. The words tension and awkwardness have been used to describe the relationship between the two of you. I'm wondering, over the course of the last couple of days, is that relationship being repaired, or is it beyond repair at this point?
Well, I think you should look at the maps that we put out. We've been working for some time on figuring out a port-to-port strategy and how we can support each other in developing those economic corridors, the main ones going up to Gray's Bay, so that we can support the Northern Territories, Arctic security, Arctic sovereignty, and dual-use infrastructure, but also going from Prince Rupert to Churchill, as well as the important expansions that are happening in Vancouver. And when you see just the breadth of things that we're working on together for infrastructure to support each other in not only trading with each other but also finding new markets, I think that speaks very loudly. We've been working on it for some time. Our officials worked on it for some time, and we came to an agreement today, which is why we've released the document and released the maps. And I think that that's a testament to where we want to work together.
Thanks,
Premier
Julia.
Eby, would you care to respond?
Yeah, well, just quickly. I mean, British Columbians sent me here with a clear mission, which is to work with the other premiers and get things done for the country. They are not asking me to fight with other premiers. They're not asking me to delay things. They're just saying, make sure that our interests are represented around creating jobs, creating opportunities, supporting my family with having enough money to pay the bills and deal with the cost of living. Those are the priorities of British Columbia. That's what I come to this table with. I disagree profoundly with Premier Smith's referendum. I think it is a huge mistake. And Premier Smith disagrees with me profoundly about issues related to a pipeline to the North Coast and the North Coast tanker ban. That's okay. We can disagree with each other, and she can still give me a real nice pair of boots, and I can come here and say, what an amazing province you have. We got to find a way to work these things out together at the table, and we have to be at the table to be able to do that, and we will.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to our next at the mic.
Hi there, Edward Jen from City News. My first question is for the Premier of Alberta. Premier Smith, you said that BC leadership, both current and previous, has led or contributed to separatism sentiment here in Alberta. Following the 2 days that you had with the premiers, including the BC Premier, is that still your same view, that the current leadership in British Columbia is leading to separatism sentiment here in Alberta?
I can't erase history. I can't erase the 10 years of targeting with policy against our energy sector. I can't erase the actions of BC premiers going all the way back to Christy Clark to set up barriers and try to derail our economic infrastructure to the coast. I know that British Columbians have concerns that need to be addressed. We've been working through and trying to understand what those are and how we might be able to address them. And I hope that we're able to find a way to come to some common ground. But I think there is no question there has been a 180-degree turn on this in the last 18 months. I think we don't forget about the past that happened that led to this moment, but we also have to acknowledge that the Prime Minister is working very constructively with our province and others to try to find solutions. That's what our MOU is about. It was about undoing 8 out of the 9 bad laws that were impairing our ability to attract investment dollars. There's still one other issue that's outstanding that I'm going to work on. But I believe that the Prime Minister is playing the role that the Prime Minister of this country has always been supposed to play. Trade and commerce powers fall under federal jurisdiction for a reason. And it's so that if there are disputes between provinces, then they're able to act as a mediator and mitigator and a champion to try to make sure that issues get resolved so that both parties are able to get their products to market. So as Premier Eby said, there's some different disagreements on routing and some of the concerns that he's raised, but I believe that the Prime Minister, in good faith, is going to work with us to try to find a mutually beneficial arrangement. And that is the role the Prime Minister always should have played. That is not the role the Prime Minister played when it was Prime Minister Trudeau. It's part of the reason why Albertans are as frustrated as they are, and part of the reason why I have to demonstrate that through my actions and through the work that I can do with the Prime Minister, that things have changed. And that's important. And when things have changed, we have to acknowledge it. It doesn't mean that people still don't have hurt feelings and frustration at the economic harm and pain that has been caused for the past 10 years, but we can undo a lot of that by making sure that we're working constructively together. And I think we've entered a new era on that, and I'm glad for it.
Premier Eby, can you just describe the nature of the talks that you had with Premier Smith? Were they tense? And what was her response? And what were you satisfied with her response with those conversations that you had with her?
All the premiers spent the day together discussing many issues of common interest. You can see them outlined in the communique. And one of the things that I do appreciate about my relationship with Premier Smith is even in the depths of significant disagreement on major priorities, we're still able to come together and have frank and civil conversations. You know, I've outlined my very strong belief and our government's very strong position that the tanker ban off the North Coast cannot and should not go anywhere, that it is essential to protecting a $2 billion a year economy, and it is essential to social license for projects like Silism's LNG that we were just talking about at the beginning of this press conference. I outlined my deep concern that British Columbia has not been at the table around discussion of major national policies related to carbon price and methane emissions, given that we are a producer of natural gas and petroleum products in British Columbia as well. And I outlined my concerns about the referendum question, and Premier Smith outlined her concerns to me and her priorities for her province. That's what this table is all about. And so I respect the relationship. It's an important relationship for us. Alberta is our biggest interprovincial trading partner. It's one of the biggest interprovincial trading relationships in the country. I hope it continues that way. And we have far more to lose than to gain by letting disputes come between us, and certainly by not finding a path forward. Now, I just want to put on the record so that there's no confusion here. I may have to go vote shortly. I've encouraged all my colleagues to win elections by more than one vote to avoid this scenario, but I haven't found a better press conference somewhere else, and it's not in relation to your questions if you see me suddenly leave the stage. Thanks.
We have time for a few more questions. We'll take a couple more in the room and then go to Zoom.
Hi, Annie Véro from Radio-Canada. My first question will be for Wab Kinew in French, please. C'est possible de répondre en français et en anglais. Je crois que mes collègues vont apprécier. Je vais faire suite à la question de ma collègue. Vous avez rencontré les leaders des peuples autochtones ce matin. Je me demandais si les discussions que vous avez eues aujourd'hui, selon vous, vont être suffisantes pour répondre aux inquiétudes qu'on vous a relevées ce matin.
Alors, hier, on a rencontré avec plusieurs chefs et des leaders des communautés autochtones. Il y avait un ici aussi, à Kananaskis, qui est engagé avec les autres premiers ministres. Et puis, pour moi, c'est toujours important de juste montrer le respect, de juste dire que oui, nous sommes ici pour engager avec des questions des politiques, des questions des ressources économiques. Et puis, pour moi, c'était important, avant d'engager avec mes collègues ici, de montrer ce signe de respect les peuples autochtones ici. Et puis, ils ont engagé avec moi dans une façon culturelle. Alors, pour moi, c'était très important. Au niveau de votre question de comment est-ce que ça marchait ici, après cet engagement, ben oui, il y avait une conversation au niveau des politique de la séparation d'Alberta, mais surtout c'était un engagement avec les enjeux économiques. les enjeux dans le système de santé, les enjeux au sujet des services sociaux et des autres besoins. Alors oui, ça se peut qu'on a une discussion de l'unité nationale au niveau ici, mais beaucoup des chefs que j'ai rencontrés sont plus engagés avec les services directs à leurs citoyens et avec les autres Albertains et puis Canadiens. Oui, et puis une autre chose qui était... Tu as utilisé le mot inquiétude. Une inquiétude, c'est les divisions entre les personnes qui habitent ici dans l'Alberta. Et je prends ça très sérieux. Alors oui, il y a des questions de l'unité canadienne, mais il y a aussi juste des questions des voisins qui devraient être capables d'habiter un à côté à l'autre. Alors, j'espère qu'en engageant avec le premier ministre de l'Alberta et puis les autres collègues, nous pourrons trouver une façon de réunir les Canadiens de côte à côte à côte. So, just to repeat in English for your colleagues, you know, when I met with folks yesterday, there was a lot of engagement culturally. There was a lot of political discussion, of course. Alberta separation is very top of mind for everybody, but I think it was more so about questions of the economy, healthcare, pensions, and the ability to sustain social services for their citizens. So we can have a discussion at this level about, you know, national unity, but like most leaders, I think the chiefs that I was engaging with are also very, very concerned about how they're going to help people, you know, pay the rent and put food on the table and stuff like that. And then when you asked about anxieties or uncertainties that people have expressed to me, certainly we want to see Canada work with Alberta as like a strong, strong economic engine and a source of cultural life and vitality for the rest of the country. But I think one of the concerns that I heard was just about the division that is unfortunately crept up from time to time. And, you know, that's what really... You know, over the course of my political career, I've tried to focus maybe more on a message of unity because it is about neighbors being able to live next to neighbors. And whether you're Indigenous, non-Indigenous, Albertan, non-Albertan, you know, we're all Canadians. And we got to find a way to live together. So hopefully through some of the more challenging conversations, as evidenced by the comments by both Premier Eby and Premier Smith today, I just hope that we can all live together as Canadians and have our disagreements when we have them, but more importantly, focus on the things that unite us as part of this great country of Canada.
My follow-up will be for Danielle Smith. According to some information from Radio-Canada, Stephen Guilbeault is set to leave politics soon. Would like to have your reaction on that.
I wish him well in his future endeavors.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for 2 more questions. We'll take one more here from the room, and then we'll take one from the Zoom.
David Winnick, Western Standard. This one's for Premier Smith. Prime Minister Carney said a referendum vote of 50% plus 1 is not enough to separate from Canada. Do you agree?
I think the Prime Minister also said that the question we're asking is not a Clarity Act question. It's a question asking if Albertans want to remain in Canada or if they want to start the process of ultimately moving to a referendum on whether or not to separate. So it is testing the waters based on 700,000 signatures collected, 400,000 on the Remain petition, 300,000 on the Independence petition, but it's structured in a way that allows us to get some indication from Albertans on policy. It's not a Clarity Act question, it's not binding.
Okay, and this goes to Premier Eby. This has to do with the German LNG deal. If BC natural gas is good for export, then why isn't Alberta oil?
So thanks for the question. In the North Coast region where the LNG tankers will be passing from the Silisms LNG facility, there are a collection of First Nations that have lived in that area for thousands of years. And their culture, life, economy is dependent on the North Coast. Fishing, the beaches, being able to harvest food that they need, and also for the economies up there, which are it's not the easiest place to make a living. There have been oil spills nearby. We had the Nathan Stewart, which was a tug, spilled diesel, destroyed a fishing area off of Bella Bella, and then of course the Exxon Valdez. And so there's a lot of anxiety in that region about the impact of catastrophic oil spill, and more particularly a bitumen spill, and the impact that that would have that could not be remediated. These are incredibly treacherous waters. A natural gas leak evaporates into the atmosphere. A bitumen spill is around forever. And so when we are engaging with these nations that have rights and title in the area about economic development in the region, they say, look, we're game. We're here. We're partners in economic development. Just please do not do work here that could catastrophically impair our livelihoods for generations to come. And that means no bitumen tankers, no oil tankers in this region. That's why multiple generations of politicians from multiple parties have supported the tanker ban in this region. Dangerous waters, fragile ecosystems, dependent communities. And that's the difference. That's why we support the expansion of the TMX pipeline through the optimization project, why we're working on that with Alberta. And that is why, at the same time, we can say, please do not remove the tanker ban off the North Coast. It is not the same thing, and don't feel like it is the same thing, because a lot rides on whether or not those nations are supportive, not the least of which is the largest private sector investment in Canadian history, LNG Canada Phase 2, as well as the Silesums LNG project that I was just telling you about earlier.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for one last question. We're going to go to the Zoom. We'll be going to National Post, Rahim Mohammed. You should be unmuted and can ask your question.
I see Premier Eby's just leaving, unfortunately. On top of the headline question that Premier Smith is asking about Alberta's future in Canada, she's also putting forward 5 constitutional questions to Albertans. A big one is for more provincial control over judicial appointments. Abolishing the Senate is another one. I wanted to check the temperature and gauge the interest across the room in another round of constitutional talks and a potential Western Canada-led fix to the problem parts of the Constitution.
It's been much discussed, not only at this table from a Western Canada perspective over the 8.5 years that I've been a part of this table, but also at the Council of Federation table as well. And it really comes down not so much to a Western versus the rest of Canada change of the Constitution. However, the focus may be that direction at times. But to a provincial autonomy and having respect for the Constitution. And I think, the federal areas of the Constitution and the provincial areas of the Constitution. And I think before we even get into that, we can agree on the fact that when we have strong and growing and vibrant provinces that are working together, unified and having, to David Eby's points, a frank and civil conversations like you saw here over the last day and a half, to further our opportunities collectively. Ultimately, the success of those provinces is going to very much make for a stronger nation of Canada, and I would think over time very much a more united nation of Canada. It's that very lack of respect for those constitutional areas that provinces have, the very right under that Constitution to govern in and to make decisions in development of our natural resources, for example, that over the last 10 years have largely been trampled on by the former Prime Minister, as I jokingly, not affectionately, jokingly say he who should not be named. That has created many of the differences that some areas of this nation are managing their way through today. And I spoke of this yesterday, and I speak of this every day. That appears to be changing, albeit not perfect from my view. I would like to see things move quicker, faster, and go further. However, they are changing, and they're changing significantly, and we should take note of that. All of us, and each of us as individuals. We have the province of Manitoba putting forward an LNG pipeline as a major project, accepted by the major projects list, to export British Columbia and Alberta LNG to European markets. Very much a conversation that didn't happen around this table even a few years ago. We see the Major Projects Office, an office I would say that is there to find its way through what is an unworkable regulatory environment that has been formed over the course of the last 10 years, but a significant policy change by Prime Minister Carney, and I think one that is appreciated by most, if not all, of the provinces. You see the province of British Columbia, Alberta, we have an interest in expanding our energy producing industry in Saskatchewan, in particular on the west side, but also in the southern part of our province, and accessing some of that additional egress capacity. And we'll find a route. We've done this before. We just built a line to the west coast a number of years ago, and we will do it as Canadians by talking to one another and consulting with one another throughout that process. You've seen Prime Minister Carney greatly elevate Canada's credibility in the global sphere, in the global trade environment. I've seen that firsthand as I've been on a number of missions with them to other countries that are very important to not only the Saskatchewan economy and all of our provincial economies, but more broadly the economy of our nation of Canada. And so you see significant changes, albeit admittedly, not perfect. But there is certainly an approach and a collaborative approach from the Prime Minister that I know that we can work with. And we won't get our way each and every time, nor will Premier Kinew, nor will Premier Smith, Premier Eby, premiers from our territories. You won't get your way every time. However, you will have the opportunity to have the conversation to make your case. And I think it's important to note that we will get our way sometimes in certain areas of the nation, and we will be able to build our economy in our provinces, each of our provinces, and access those markets around the world. And the very opening paragraph of the communique today speaks to the conversation that we had with that respect. And I would just overshadow all of this with one point. Three of the largest projects that are happening, private sector projects that are happening in Canada today, are happening between the premiers that sitting on this stage in Western Canada. The largest being the LNG project in British Columbia. BHP and a data center, BHP Potash Mine in Saskatchewan is number 2. A data center is number 3. And you can go beyond that down the list and you'll find those in a number of our provinces in Western Canada. So Premier Smith's point about the unrivaled growing economy in western and northern parts of our nation is our path to that economic powerhouse, or the strongest economy in the G7. It is our path to becoming a global energy superpower. Alongside those significant projects that are tens of billions of dollars, I would suggest that the largest projects are yet to come, and they're to come in that energy space, whether that be in Alberta or British Columbia, whether that be flowing product to our west coast or out the port of Churchill. Some of the most significant and largest projects that are going to have the largest and most significant impact on our Canadian economy have yet to come. If we continue to work together, have those frank and civil conversations, speak about working together in the unity of our nation, giving everyone reason to want to be a part of our nation. And I certainly saw that in the room over the last day or day and a half, and I just say thank you to my provincial counterparts for, although we don't agree on everything, we can set aside, not set aside those divisions, work through those divisions to a better place for all of us. And I think what you'll see in the next number of weeks and months is a discussion about all the reasons that we should be continuing to work together, expand our economy so that we can make those investments in community that you spoke of earlier, Premier Kinew, across this nation. And that's the only way we're going to do it, is by not backing away from the table, not judging, not casting judgment on any other Canadian, but giving them reason to want to be a part of this nation. I see it starting to turn with the federal leadership that we have. Not perfect, but it certainly is better than we have. And I would say that it is an opportunity for us to aspire to some of the statements that he's made, and I think aspire to a number of the things that we want to aspire to in our respective jurisdictions.
Go for your follow-up.
So Premier Moa, what I'm hearing from you is a big part of what's changed is you have a Prime Minister in Ottawa who's more respectful of provincial autonomy than the last guy. But should the provinces have to rely on the benevolence of Ottawa? And if not, would it be worth changing the Constitution to write in things like an opt-out clause for provinces from federal programs, to write in a statement of primacy of provincial law in areas of shared jurisdictions, both of which are questions being put to Albertans right now in that province's referendum?
Well, one of the challenges, and this, I guess I got away from this in in my last answer, but one of the challenges is it's not easy to change the Constitution. We've changed it once on an item to do with taxation on in the railway system in Saskatchewan. I've openly tried to change it a number of other times as well in some of the themes that you have spoken about over the course of the last 10 years when we were having, unconsulted policies from Saskatchewan's perspective and the industries that are employing Saskatchewan's people's perspective that were harmful to families and to communities in our province. And that feeling was very real. And so I have had conversations at the Western Premiers Conference in years gone by and the Council of Federation Conference in years gone by about putting forward motions in that theme to actually change the Constitution. That was the only way that we saw as possible to get the changes that we needed with the current leadership that we have. Today, that's different. You can pick up the phone and you can talk to the Prime Minister. And I don't think there's anybody here that feels that they can't. You can work through the challenges that you might have, which I would suggest is the Canadian way. For us to work through to what is the best solution. You aren't always going to get your way, also the Canadian way, but you are going to get your way sometimes, and we are going to arrive at a better place collectively. That is, what I see happening right now. And I'm happy for it.
And that'll be all the time we have for questions today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.